Hi there, it's Kirk from the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. I'm delighted to be joined for tonight's interview by a name that some of you will know, Dutch musician Michel Nienhuis. He was a founder member of the cult avant-garde black metal band Dodecahedron. Unfortunately, they split up in 2020, and he went on to form a new band called Autarkh, who won critical acclaim in 2021 for their Form in Motion debut. And tonight, Michelle, we're going to be talking mainly about your sophomore album that came out last month called Emergent. Before we do that, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Excellent.
having us.
You're welcome. I've been trying to arrange this for some time, so delighted to have the chance to ask you some questions and learn more about Autarkh. So the first thing I want to really talk about, you've just released your second album, Emergent, via Season of Mist. And this follows your 2021 debut, Form in Motion. The albums are quite different from each other. Why is Emergent so different to the last album?
Well, it has to do with multiple things, but I guess one of the most important things is that, um, well, yeah. Let me explain like this. When Autarkh came into existence, so to say, so when I had the idea of kind of well, not reusing, but there were a bunch of songs already written for the third Dodecahedron album. Um, and when that band ceased to exist, I wouldn't want to throw that material away. So I was thinking of a way to still use that material, but in some other context, for some other band maybe. And then I remembered an idea from years earlier, where I had the idea of once, in my lifetime, trying to combine that type of music, that type of quite extreme metal, with electronic beats, and that came back to mind. And then I thought, like, hey, maybe these songs, we could just try and experiment with these songs. Maybe I can find some people who find this interesting and see if we can make that work. So that's basically a very brief explanation of how Autarkh came into existence. And as you may imagine, or can imagine, it was kind of a search process of how, in what ways, to combine these beats with that type of metal, So we were trying to figure out that sound, and Form in Motion is the first display of that, so to say. But we were definitely in search of ways of how to do that, and the result ended up being quite a dense and layered and yeah, extreme album in a way where it can maybe be at some point a bit, tiring or tiresome. What's the word for the ears? It's really dense.
Claustrophobic, perhaps, is a good word.
Claustrophobic, maybe, indeed. Which I think kind of suits the thing we're trying to convey, or the message we're trying to send. But we kind of quickly knew that for the second album, we wanted to try and accomplish a somewhat more transparent sound. So we had, we found the results that we found for Form in Motion, and then we knew the things that were working, on an audio production level, and then we expanded on it, and we were like, okay, how can we maybe strip away or deal with things in a slightly different way that it will become a more transparent sound. So it's an evolution on that, so to say. Trying to find a bit more of a transparent sound, even though it's still quite layered. So that's one main difference. And the other one is also, well, as I started out saying, the songs that were laying around were written by me for the third Dodecahedron album. And on this album, it is kind of on a composition level, it's a joint effort of David and me. So it's basically almost 50-50 songs written by him and written by me. And of course, we had already then, or now, been, working and playing together for a couple of years. So, all these things into the mix created this new album with a different atmosphere and a different sound, a more transparent sound. And then I guess the third thing would be that the message behind it, or in the lyrics you could find that it's the angle is also a bit more. I mean, it's still about ups and downs and struggles, but we're in the next chapter on a more clear waters or something. Is that a way of phrasing it? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a bit more positive.
I'm pleased you mentioned that. I'd like to talk about the lyrical concepts later on as well, because I really enjoyed Form in Motion, the story that unfolds in that. And I think when I interviewed you 2 years ago for Screen Blast Repeat, the way I interpreted it, it was this community that rips itself apart, and there's it was like a dystopian, but at the same time, really quite a gritty Lord of the Flies type environment, of survivalism. And so I'd like to move on to that in a moment about Emergent and the themes. Can I just ask though, so you've actually answered this next question. I was going to say you could hear Dodecahedron in the debut Autarkh album, not so much in this one. So what feedback have you had from the Dodecahedron fan base when they've heard this second album from Autarkh?
I wouldn't know exactly, because I don't really have people like specifically messaging me from that type of angle. But I, of course, from the music industry, there's of course the comparison between the two. And I also got this question by a different journalist saying like, don't you get tired of this comparison? But I don't mind at all. I think it's a very logical thing that, one thing might evolve out of another. And in this situation, they are really connected in a way that, like I just explained, that the songs were on Form in Motion, some of them were originally written for Dodecahedron, but also on this album, this connection is still there, but in a different way, not so much in sound, but I don't know if you saw, but we released, I think about 3 weeks ago, there was a video, we put a video online where I kind of explained how material that is on Emergent relates to things that are on Dodecahedron albums, but also relate to the things that we do with Autarkh 3. That's kind of our alter ego, where we kind of reinterpret and reshape Autarkh songs in a different context. So it's kind of all, like a little universe, a little network where things are connected, which kind of makes sense to me on some sort of universal level. And yeah, some people, of course, have, a more conservative listener might have a bit more of a problem with the fact that there's no acoustic drums in there, so that's something that we hear from time to time, like, okay, yeah, they don't necessarily dislike the sound, but especially in a live situation, you could imagine like, okay, there's no drummer. That's a very different look and a very different type of atmosphere, maybe. But there's also things that are similar. I mean, we're still, I'm still the energetic, intense type of musician, trying to just, get across what I want to try and get across. So, it's all good. I mean, people can feel about it how they want. I am fine with it.
Yeah. So, you said, unfortunately, when Michel Eichener passed away, who was the vocalist, wasn't it, of Dodecahedron, you knew that you had these songs for the third album. It was not going to be released under that name, and you had an opportunity to look at them from a different angle with the electronics. So you meet, how long have you known Tijn Verbruggen, the person who handles the beats? Where did you two meet? What is your background?
I knew Tijn already a couple of years because we were colleagues at kind of a music institute that helps up-and-coming musicians who aspire to go and study at schools like a conservatory or rock academy. We have a bunch of them here in the Netherlands. They come in on Saturdays while they might be still in last year of high school, and then get some extra music education towards their step towards like a professional music education institute. So that's where I knew him from. He was teaching audio production, and I was being a band coach and guitar coach. And we always, I remember back then, we were, always kind of in line with musical tastes, like we enjoyed the same things. And I thought it would be interesting to talk to him about it. And with David, the other guitar player in Autarkh, I met him when we were doing our farewell tour with my old band, Exvius. It was a farewell tour of both us and the headliner Textures. And David's old band, Extremities, was opening support. And I got acquainted with him there. And and Desmond, the bass player, he also lives around the corner. He's a sound engineer at one of the local venues here. He also did the same school as I did. It's kind of, we ran into each other and started to discuss this whole idea of the, the metal and the beats and stuff and the synth layers and everything. And it came together very nice.
Yeah, it looks good live as well. Obviously, you played Roadburn, didn't you? And the absence of a live drummer, I don't think that has a detrimental impact on the music. If anything, especially you, I think you stand out. Two things: you're really tall, and you're a left-handed guitar player.
Yeah,
that just stands out for me. I just think you just look like somebody who's been playing that instrument for decades. You can tell that you know that inside out, just the way you hold it.
Okay, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. Can I talk actually about your vocals on this album? So it seems like you've discovered new possibilities in your vocal register. A lot of melody. How easy or difficult was it to develop the sound you're singing on this record? Because it's excellent, by the way. I just want to know how it evolved from the first album, where you're really doing like more extreme metal, like post-metal type screaming. So why? How did you develop your voice for this album?
By practicing, but it's, in my experience, it's very different from practicing guitar. But let me just explain this. When in the very beginning stages of Autarkh, when only the idea was there, and I was talking to people, I was also talking to the second singer of the Dodecahedron, who back then the idea was that he would do the vocals, but he was busy and I had some ideas, so I was just sketching things and doing some demo vocal recordings for to explain to him how I was thinking about phrasing the syllables on the music. But then I found out that I was trying something out, and then I noticed that there was some sort of clean tone in there, like a pitch, but it was distorted, and I thought it would be. I found it immediately interesting to try and see and maybe discover that a bit more, like see what I can do with it. And eventually, he kept being busy, and it turned out that it became more and more my story. So I decided that I should do the vocals, and when we recorded that, I was kind of not really or really not aware of what I was doing. As in, I've been playing guitar for over 20 years, so I kind of know that instrument, know what I'm doing. I can explain to other people quite properly how things work or why things sound the way they sound. But with the voice, I have no idea. I'm just doing what I think I should do that sounds right. So when we started to rehearse for the live situation, I ran into some problems, because when you record, you can just redo takes whenever until they sound good, But I had been doing some things on the recording that were quite difficult to achieve in a live situation. So then I knew I had to practice it, and especially the stamina of keeping it up for a whole song or multiple songs in a row. So I started to practice, and what I noticed is that the progress was really slow, but whenever there was progress, it it felt really good. And with studying guitar, I kind of got, usually I got bored quite fast, as in I like it when I'm playing a song or when I'm playing music. So I like to study parts or things that I figure out that I want to play, or some riff by some other band. But literally like practicing a specific technique or something, I thought it was always a bit, I'm just an impatient person. So I guess that's just it. But with singing, if the things go wrong, you can get irritated very quickly, because it's all very personal. You know, it comes out of your throat, and you feel you're not completely in control of what you're doing, and then you have a hunch of, oh, maybe this is the way to do it, and then it can go well for a couple of days, and then there's a day that's really off, and you feel like, oh man, I'm not making any progress at all. But yeah, of course, this is about the long run and keeping it up. I'd like to compare it to fitness, where you go, to the gym every week for a longer period of time, and only if you do it for a longer period of time, you will start to notice the gains. And this happens the same, because are also muscles, so you're training the muscle.
Yeah.
Now, I've been doing that, of course, and then around the time of the second of the recording for Emergent, it was already a lot better, and I had already figured out that I was slowly getting more steady and better at the cleaner tone. So whenever I felt like maybe I can try it for this record, here and there, a bunch of lines that are completely clean, because they also feel, next to screaming and shouting, which I've been acquainted with for years, this felt like a new expression tool. So I was thinking, like, if I can add an extra expression tool to my expression toolkit, so to say, that would be great, So that's why it became a bit of exploring journey of exploration and figuring this out. I like to try out new things, so that's why it went this way. And I still I'm making progress still slowly, and that's just something that I really like to do.
Yeah, it's very ambitious. The vocal lines, especially on track number 1. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da, 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 da. It's like you've approached it like a guitar, the vocal line. And I remember seeing an interview with Chris Cornell of Soundgarden. He was a baritone singer, but obviously he's famous for reaching these high notes.
Yes.
And he said he just, like you, just did it one day and kept challenging himself, can you go higher? And I realized that he never felt any strain, but he puts the strain into his voice. I get the feeling you're doing that for the high notes. I actually hear it. I think, oh, actually, that's quite easy for you. A bit like Devin Townsend, when you watch his face and he's doing harsh vocals, you think, oh, he's putting everything into it. It's not. It's his technique. Are you finding that quite easy now to hit those higher notes?
Yeah, it went a bit differently for me, but let me just say, you hit the nail on the head with Chris Cornell, because he's the guy that I'm kind of listening to, and I'm singing his songs because he's a baritone, like you mentioned. I am also, but I know what he has mastered is what they call mixed voice. So, if you have an untrained, as a male, you have an untrained voice, there's like this flipped turning point at some point where you go, and then it turns from chest voice into head voice. Now there's a way to get these two connected, and then we're talking about mixed voice, and he's like very good at that, and he likes to turn or to dial in the distortion once he goes to these higher notes. Now I have been coming from the opposite angle, so I figured out that I don't really know. Didn't know it was mixed voice, but I knew I could hit some high notes with distortion. And all I've been working on these past years is to try and dial the distortion down, because I was putting way too much strain on it. And after a show, I feel my throat was just a bit sore. It never became a real problem, but I don't know if we're touring for 4 weeks straight and I have to sing every night. I don't know if I will manage eventually, So I'm trying to learn to do it in a more healthy way. So what I'm practicing is basically trying to maintain the same intensity in the sound, but trying to dial down the amount of pressure I put on the voice. And I just keep listening to him, and then I can just imagine him. It sounds right, but he's not putting in the strain like I am. And then sometimes it works, and sometimes I still overdo it. It's just a matter of a lot of repetition. You know?
I can see that it's something you're really enjoying. You are studying the voice now, aren't you, as an instrument? It's great to see that for the next few years, you're just going to be learning more about your voice, and you don't need lessons. I mean, obviously, you're listening to Chris Cornell, and that's exciting for fans of Autarkh, myself included, that I think you could keep pushing yourself with this voice. It's still in transit at the moment, and it's very strong. I should say to our viewers, do you know what it reminds me of, actually? I think Joe Duplantier of Gojira has always had a bit of clarity in his vocals. It's like you've just pushed through beyond that, where the phonation is even clearer, but it's still got that grit.
Yeah.
So exactly. really, really well done on that. I have to say, I was.
Thank you so much, man.
Surprised by you.
And then every like half a year or so, I go and see some coach. Sometimes this one, that one, to just because I know progress is really slow. So whenever I feel like, okay, now I'm on this point, and I want to just have an actual vocal professional check if I'm doing it right, or maybe they have tips and tricks, and then it can be something as simple as, yeah, but if you just do this, then blah blah blah, and then I'll try it and like, what? Okay, cool. So that is also very helpful.
Yeah. So do you know, we talked about you wanted to involve an electronic angle to this music and still have like this quite harsh extreme metal style. What are the non-metal influences on the music of Autarkh?
For starters, it's of course the type of electronic music, a bit more abstract electronic music by Aphex Twin, Autarkh, that kind of a type of beats. The music that is more, I guess, synthesizer based, or that can also be electronic music, but has more to do with atmosphere rather than with metal. But yeah, I think we don't really categorize. We don't really, in the band, we don't really talk about whether it's like, oh, that's metal and that's not. But we just find stuff that we like or that we don't like, I guess, and that can go. That can be about any genre. So sometimes we just really like songs, and sometimes. Yeah, but we seem to agree on those. But I'm just thinking of examples. Like, for instance, now especially David and I are really into these. It's not really one. It's got music that is overlapping between jazz, hip hop, soul, instrumental stuff, but with these really wonky, weird beats. Like Maxwell and Athletic Progression, and Kiefer is really good from the Stone's Throw, that record label. It has nothing to do with metal, and it's a completely different atmosphere, but we really enjoy listening to it. And maybe, I don't think we directly take inspiration from that, but it crawls into our minds. Or one other example that you might not think of immediately is that at some point there was a discussion going on. Somebody was hating on Coldplay, and David mentioned, well, dude, the old Coldplay stuff, I really like it, and I didn't knew it about him, and I said to him, dude, I feel the same way. So if you listen to that, for instance, and maybe hear how the guitar sounds work, or what type of lines and how they intertwine with each other, you might find a similarity here or there with Autarkh as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. Those first two Coldplay albums have stood up quite well. I know you're right. I know people, probably myself included, just dismiss them now. But in terms of songwriting, I think it's important, isn't it, for you as a musician to be open to all forms of music, because you're just learning all the time, aren't you? I think if you close yourself off, and just say, we're a metal band, we only listen to down-tuned, distorted guitars and blast beats, you're not really going to, it's going to be very difficult for you to write anything innovative or that's approaching originality. So,
Yeah, but you also don't have to if you don't want to, because
no.
it's perfectly fine if you make like 10 of the same albums. If the formula works and you like doing it, then that's just fine. Only for the types of people that we are, we like to try and reinvent something or get inspired by something new, or we are in a different phase of our lives 3 years later and something has come up like, that's maybe the way I'd like to try and translate it, you know. So that's just the thing, the type of thing that inspires us. And for me personally, I've always found it interesting to try and, you know, fuck around a bit with combining styles or see what can I use from this or that. You know, same with Dodecahedron, where I must have mentioned also like a classical composer like Yuri Ligeti as an influence, because, you know, he has a bunch of works. He has 2 symphonic works that are, you know, more evil than your standard black metal. So I was like, wow, it's really interesting, all these, you know, eerie intertwining violins, and it's just like madness. And I thought it would go really well if we that type of sound design together with extreme metal, you know. So yeah,
no, definitely. Let's talk about the lyrical. Is it a concept album, Emergent?
If by concept album you mean that you could see it as a narrative as a whole, then yes, because that's kind of how I approach, because that's what we release, what I've been releasing with different bands over the past years, are albums. So if that's a collection of songs, then I'd like to, you know, in the beginning of that process, I like to look at it as like a book with chapters, basically, and some kind of narrative or storyline and some logical connections between certain parts of the narrative, but also musically, maybe, you know, it can go in different directions. If I write all the music myself, it's very easy to make these musical connections also, but now we've been doing it, the 2 of us, and it can turn out a bit different. But yeah, it's kind of, you know, we start out with a sound that is similar or taken from the final song of the first album, and then it's kind of meant to display like, okay, we stop there and now we follow up on it with this song Open Focus, which is kind of relatively steady and relatively consonant, you know, as in meant to display some kind of entering a meditative state, you know. That's what open focus also means. It's like entering the open focus of a kind of a meditative state. And then the idea behind it is that we can go and visit in this meditation, so to say, visit the different energy centers in the body. So we start low, you know, in the body, and then each of the songs kind of is connected strongly or loosely to one of these energy centers. And then if you you know, from my personal experience, you know, if things in my life or in my being are out of balance, it's usually in the second and third, or first, second, third energy centers that things feel off. You know, if I'm nervous or not feeling well, it's usually that I feel it in my stomach or the pit of my gut, you know. So that's why Strife and Dukkha, but also the first part of Trek, are relatively darker, you know. And then as we move upwards, it becomes more elevated, so to say, or more insightful, as in the character in the storyline is figuring out things and starting to experience and seeing things in a way like, okay, yeah, I see this connection here, and okay, I see the relevance of that, and that's kind of how you could experience this kind of inner journey, this album.
Yeah, because the first album, so clearly then this isn't a sequel to the first album, because just to give you an idea, Lost to Sight. So this is from the first album. I know that many will still be going down the road of disillusion, degradation, and death, Isolation and denial can keep us moving along this downhill path, unreceptive to a new conception of the fundamental elements that constitute reality. But from the Great Fall onwards, we may be able to discover the principle.
Yeah.
Actually, that is about the self, isn't it? But am I right in thinking this first album, is this a story about a community, that a stranded community that tried to build a utopia and end up murdering each other?
Yeah, you could interpret it like that. Yes, I'm using. I've been searching for a type of phrasing or a collection of words in sentences that um, inhabit a certain feeling that I want to try and get across, without being too specific about what it actually is, because obviously, or maybe not so obviously, some of these things are drawn from personal experience. So there's a personal angle in this storyline. Only I don't like to write in a way where I'm saying, and then I was there, and then I did that, and then that happened. Because then it becomes a bit too one-dimensional for my taste. And this way, it gives the listener the opportunity to see if they can, maybe you can read it and then find a similar feeling or idea in your own life, or maybe even on a bigger scale. So, yes, definitely, what you are saying makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
So this is more about the individual and self-discovery, isn't it? Emergence. Even that the name of the album makes sense now.
Yeah.
Emergent consciousness. Like you said, a word that you use quite often in this band, alignment. And
Yeah.
you said there, when you can feel that your body is misaligned.
Yes.
And that you're out of balance. So this, and meditative. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
to me, this seems even the artwork for Emergent really captures the mood. The green digitized artwork on the album.
Yeah.
That signals a change to me musically as
Yeah,
well.
those are images from an analog oscilloscope, and what an oscilloscope does, they're old machines from the 70s, and they can visually represent audio frequencies. So that kind of made sense to me because I've also been experiencing from time to time in specific types of meditations that if you tune in with enough focus to certain states of mind, that you kind of, this sounds very weird, but you're kind of, the body, especially the pineal gland, is capable of kind of receiving frequencies. If you tune into them, they can present themselves as images while your eyes are closed, like almost like frequency or little kaleidoscopic kind of things, and it feels very energetic in the brain. So I thought it would be very useful or very similar, these oscilloscope images, to use them also in the artwork. And one other thing I'd like to mention is, I mean, you might be able, you're acquainted with dodecahedron. So, and I've just mentioned, like, I'm an evolving person, but the music I write is also kind of a reflection of where I am at my life. And if you listen to the first dodecahedron album and to this album Emergent, there's clearly a difference in state of mind, or in the way I'm perceiving reality or dealing with life in general, So that's why this is all so special to me, that we are able, in this day and age to be able to create stuff out of nothing and give it our best shot and display what we think is relevant, or display our emotions and feelings. And it can be, as I'm getting older, I'm looking back at things that I've been making in the past. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It makes sense that I made that album in whatever 2012, because that's how I was feeling back then, and that's where I was at that point. And it's very, very special, and even next level if people like you pick up on it and want to talk to us about it. It's all very I'm very thankful for that, man.
Yeah, it's like your musical journey. I suppose you see it as everything. You don't regret anything you've done because that's who you were at the time. and you can
Yes,
still relate to that person because you've got it recorded in music,
exactly.
rather than, if you were just, if this was looking back 20 years and you weren't an artist and hadn't recorded any of this, you maybe might think that wasn't me, even though it was, I don't recognize
Yeah,
that person. So yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from
yeah.
on that. Just two more questions then before we wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
The main one really is Tilburg, the town where you're from in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. It's famous for this Roadburn Festival now, isn't it? When
Yes, it
I
is.
when I think of Tilburg, I just think of the Roadburn Festival. How much has that helped your band being from the same town as this prestigious art school, extreme experimental metal festival?
Well, it is definitely beneficial, and I am well acquainted with most of the people who are, involved in Roadburn Festival. Um, so yeah, of course, that plays a big part. I'm not originally from Tilburg. I grew up in the north, but I moved here when I was 17 to study music. Because back then it was one of the only pop music education institutes in the Netherlands. So that was back then the reason for me to move to Tilburg. But after a couple of years, I found out that Tilburg was already kind of a relevant city in Europe when it comes to the louder guitar music for Roadburn Festival first and foremost. But also we had a festival called Incubate for quite a while, which was about experimental arts in all genres and styles and disciplines. Um, we had Neurotic Death Fest. Later, it turned into Netherlands Death Fest. It was the largest indoor death metal festival in Europe. So these are just three examples of, and I figured it out. Like, hey, something is happening in this town, in the scene that I like to be in. And then after I finished studying, I moved to a place near Utrecht. I didn't move. I started studying in a place near Utrecht. But I stayed here because I had realized, like, I like it here. The atmosphere is good. I like the mentality. There's a good scene going on, and yeah, it's been like that. So being in a place surrounded by like-minded and creative people is definitely it's a very supporting environment, and it enhances your options and your capabilities even.
Yeah, Autarkh and certainly the Adk really are quintessential type Roadburn bands, aren't they? There's a lot of extremities in there, but a really restless avant-garde impulse to the music as well, which I love. And that's what I associate with that festival. We have one in England here called Arctangent, which is similar.
Right.
And
Yeah, I'd love
hopefully,
to play
hopefully
that one.
Autarkh will play there in the future, because you've not come to Britain yet, have you? You've not
No,
played
we
any shows
haven't.
here.
No, but Arctangent would definitely be one of the festivals that I think we would fit on that bill quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully I'll see you in. I mean, I'm like you. I'm originally from the north of my country of
Ah,
England, and I moved to the south 10 years ago. And so London is not far from where I live, so it'd be
okay.
easy to watch an
Yeah.
Autarkh concert if you played certainly in England's capital. So last question then, bit more light-hearted. Somebody who paid money to watch your band, they see the members of Autarkh backstage and they approach you. What should they expect from this encounter?
um, yeah. What should I say to that? I mean, we're not that rock and roll, you know. I used to be, but I'm taking it a bit easier now. Um, a good conversation. I mean, if you have something to say, then we are willing to listen. I guess that's. I don't know what the angle is exactly for this question, but we are approachable human beings, definitely, and we are, yeah, I don't know. We don't feel like we are entitled to anything. So we would be open to have a chat with everybody about everything.
Yeah, that's really what the question's about. Are you approachable? I know you are, speaking to you now, but so if any Autarkh fans come to a concert, what gifts should they bring? Beer, magazines, DVDs, what should they bring?
Gifts. I think we are now saving money for a wireless in-ear system. So
Right.
that would be great.
Or donate money to that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm really happy we are able to release on such a prestigious label as Season of Mist, but we're still a small band, so it's kind of it's still hard, making videos and stuff. It's quite expensive, so I just like to uh, well, not emphasize, but just mention that it might look differently to an unexpected audience member, but it's still very difficult to make ends meet if you're just a small band like we are. So if you like what we do, we have our shop at autarkh.com/shop, and we have shirts and hoodies and vinyl and CDs and stuff. So any support is always greatly appreciated.
So that's where I can get the album then. So I buy
Yeah.
CDs. I bought the first album from the Season of Mist site, and I got the t-shirt, Form in Motion t-shirt in a bundle.
Yes.
So should we go to autarkh.com to buy the CD and the merchandise? Is that the best
Yes.
place?
Yes, please, because then then it goes directly to us. Yes.
Yeah, we'll do. I will do that after this interview then, because I keep holding this up. I would like the green colored sequel to this album on my shelf as well. For our viewers, I'm just going to read the label here. From the ashes of dodecahedron, Autarkh bring you a new wave of extreme metal. Recommended if you like Død Heimsgard, Blood aus Not, Devin Townsend, and Gojira. I think that's quite accurate, I would say.
It's still quite accurate, especially Gojira and Devin Townsend. Yeah.
And same on the new album as well. So yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us, Michel. And
Yes.
hopefully I will see you in England or maybe Roadburn. I'm gonna have to go to this festival in the Netherlands, aren't I? This world famous.
All right, man.
religious festival now.
Let me know if you decide to go.
I'll wait until you guys are playing. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us. If you enjoyed this interview, please like and subscribe. And I encourage you to go to autarkh.com. Certainly, if you want to listen to the album on Deezer or Spotify, Bandcamp, I would say just go out and buy the album. But clearly, in today's world, you can go and sample it first and listen to it and stream it. But if you like it, go and buy the finished product. Thank you very much.